Hey friends, today I'm gardening with Creekside. You're going to spend some time with me out in the garden. It is the beginning of July and there are some maintenance things that I need to get taken care of, and we're going to refresh a couple of containers, refresh some things in the landscape. So basically we're just going to see how many different projects, how many things I can get checked off the to-do list before I just die of heat exhaustion. Not really, I'm not going to push myself that hard, but it is July in North Carolina. The temperature, I mean, it's warm, but the thing in the south is it's not necessarily the temperature, it is the humidity and the dew point. So it is very, very thick out here. We were blessed. Last night we got like 2 inches of rain. So when we get rain in the south in the summertime, it is a blessing because you get rain and your plants love it. It is a curse very soon after because the humidity is just like jacked up and you are just absolutely drenched. So you are going to see me sweating and glisten today, and this is gardening in real life. We're going to have fun together. What we're going to do first is we are going to tackle the Weston urns that I have here on our back patio. We have 2 of them on each side of the seating wall, and it has come that time in the season for me to replace them. We talked about this throughout the season that I knew that I would come to this point in the summer where I needed to replace them. So in the center of each of the urns, they're planted the exact same. I have a sprinter boxwood that I actually planted in here last fall. I used that during the fall, winter, and all the way up through now. That has been kind of the staple piece, and then I have switched things around it. This spring, I want to say it was late March, early April, I planted underneath the sprinters these campfire marshmallow bidens. These are going to be a new introduction from Proven Winners next year. So you will be able to get them in spring of 2024. We really do like bidens. Bidens themselves are a kind of a newish plant for me in the fact that in the past couple of years, I discovered them and then started growing them. Bidens, so a biden is like a petunia or a rose. It's the name of the type of plant that it is. Great, beautiful flowers. So marshmallow is the new one, a nice pure white one. It does have like a little yellow center to it, but they're great pollinator attractors. They're wonderful for cool weather. So for us in North Carolina with our heat in the summer, they do really well as an early spring planting. They'll go dormant kind of in the summer heat, and then they'll kick back in later on in the fall. We talked about this just the other day when we were doing the container video. If I was able to put enough water on them, I think they would sustain and look well throughout the season. Sorry, our big old heron, we have a gray heron, and he just flew over. I wish the camera would have caught that, but it didn't. Oh darn, oh well, we call him Harry the heron. Sorry, I digress. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to pull out the bidens because I have some that have died because of lack of water. We had a bird that built her bird nest and had her babies in there, so they have been on the struggle bus for sure. I am going to repot the sprinter boxwoods. I am not going to lose those, or those are going to go to waste. So I have just some black pots from the nursery that I grabbed. So we will repot those into, this is basically like a this is probably a 3-gallon. It's just a shorter 3-gallon. So that way I can save it and then use it later on either in another project, or we can put it in the ground, like maybe in the landscape of the chicken coop. So I will save those, repot those. And then what we're gonna put into these beautiful Western urns are one of my favorite grasses. So if you've been around us for any length of time, you probably know that I am a really big fan of grasses, whether they are a perennial grass or an annual grass. Today we're going to use these as annual grasses. It just makes sense because these are annual containers. This is the Graceful Grasses Skyrocket, and we have used this in several of other projects this year, and it was a couple of years ago that I used Skyrocket in here, and it was beautiful and gorgeous. I mean, they get really nice and big. It's like a white and green variegated, and then of course they've already started to do their plumes. So we're going to completely empty out these containers. I am going to replant them and use the skyrocket grass. That's all I'm going to do is put a skyrocket grass in here and let it go. In the beginning, it might look a little bare at the bottom. You have to trust me. I know what these are going to do. They are going to be gorgeous once they fill out and they are ready to get out of these pots. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and clean all of these out, and then when I replant the first one, I'll take you along for the ride and show you exactly how I prepare the container to plant them, and then we're going to kind of switch up the irrigation a little bit on these, so I will walk you through that whole process. But first, I'm going to get these cleaned out. Okay, so all I did was just empty everything out. There was nothing special about that. I just ripped everything out, cleaned out all my soil from the bottom of the Western urns. Whenever you get a unique stone container, if it's meant to be a planter, it will have a fabulous drain hole in there. So what we have is our irrigation tubing. This is a solid line that just simply comes up from the bottom of the Western urn. In the past, we were using these irrigation rings, and they were great. I've just discovered something that I like a little bit better. But you can get these, this is called Netbow, Netbow, and you can order these online. So you plug it in, right, I say plug it in, to your irrigation here. I obviously have cut that. And then throughout the bottom, there are emitters in here. So it's a hard plastic ring. I mean, it does have some flexibility, but you put it on there and then it waters your container, your hanging basket, whatever it is. They work great. The downside of them is that they are hard. So if you're putting another, like a grass in here or something, you've got to, it's hard to maneuver around the plants, I should say. And then also, while it does have great coverage, there are still some empty areas. So we're gonna do something different today and not use this. We'll save these for another application. So what we're gonna do is our good old method of the bottom third is going to be compost. Then we're gonna use the Proven Winners potting soil. I'm gonna lay down the irrigation, and then I'm gonna top dress with compost again. Now, one of you very smart people out there, when we were doing our planting in the woodland garden just last week, and I used a rock to kind of cover up my hole, one of you were like, hey Jenny, I just get a patch of burlap and cover my hole with that. And I was like, well, heaven knows I've got plenty of burlap from all of the unique stone deliveries and the containers and the packaging. So that is what I'm going to do. I just cut a patch out of one of the bags that we have. I'm just laying it on top, because the idea is that, you know, water still passes through here, roots can go through here, but we don't lose a ton of soil or compost that then goes down the big hole. So that's just laying in there. Then I've got the land and seed compost, and yes, I am standing on the wall because this is called short girl problems. When you're 5'2" on a good day, it just is easier to get up here. So land and seed, I might have been a little generous with that. That's all right. Spread it around on the bottom. I'm gonna pull it up. I was a little generous on that, but that's all right. Pull it up on the sides some, and then get my grass. Now, these grasses are have been in these containers for a while, and they are, I know, they are going to be root bound. So the reason I know is because the container is super thick. Yeah, and so that's how I know that they're root bound. Let me show you. So this is what we call a root bound plant, right? So you got the roots that are circling around. They're all over there. Now, is this a problem? Does this mean you should not use this plant? Absolutely not. It just means that you need to go in there and break it up. I have my hori. This is where you can get out any aggressions from your day, and you're just going to break up those roots. You do this so that the roots start growing and they grow out. They don't just continue to grow around the plant. So I only do this when they are obviously root bound like that. Easy. Now, simple grass goes in the middle like that. Your grasses tend to be very vigorous growers. Like, they are some very happy plants that have really strong root systems. I'm gonna take my biotone, sprinkle around the plant like that. There you go. Come back with the Proven Winner potting soil. This is where things get messy. neatness is not really the name of the game today. It's called getting the job done. So we're gonna make a mess, but I have the blower next door right beside me. So we'll come back and clean up when we're done. So really press down that potting soil. You want that potting soil in contact with your roots and get it down there, because you want as much soil in your container as you can possibly get, because if you've got soil, that means the roots can go in there and be very happy. Now, I have a nice little lip, maybe an inch between the top of my soil and the pot. That is really good, as the sweat is dripping down my face. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hook up our irrigation at this point. All right, so I've got everything adjusted here. What we're going to do is we're switching over to using the flexible brown tubing that has the emitters. There's about every, I would say, 6 to 8 inches on this. So we're switching from the hard emitters, the ring, to this flexible. One is I can, after I have my plants planted, then I can easily go in there and move, lay down my irrigation line wherever I need to. And because just from past experiences, these grasses are water hogs. The more you water them, the bigger they grow, the more beautiful they are, and I want a big, beautiful grass. So I probably will go around twice with this tubing so that it gets really nice and saturated and I have big, beautiful grasses. Because when your grass dries out, if it doesn't get enough water, you will notice that the foliage starts to turn brown. Once that foliage turns brown, it's not going to turn green again. The only way to get rid of that brown foliage is to cut it out. Now, will it produce new green foliage? Absolutely. But once you've got brown in there, it's not going to come out, and that's not what we want. So I am not going to cut any shorter my white tubing, because, you know, who knows, you know, in the future I might need it longer, or this length. So we have a little coupler, little teeny coupler that goes into both of these containers. I mean, these drip tubings here. So we're going to get that in there, and you're just going to squeeze it on there. So once you have your coupler on the one end, then you grab your brown tubing, and this is where it gets fun, because, you know, it's just a hot mess as far as a tangle. And then you just simply slide it on there as well. So the coupler just acts as a way to connect the two different lines of irrigation together. Just joins it in. Now, then comes the fun part in trying to determine how much length we need. I'm going to do it just really kind of rough first. So basically that's one length around. We're just going to say forget that and throw it down. It's like wrestling alligators almost, especially when you just have one set of hands doing this. Okay, we're just going to eyeball it, say that's good enough, and then we're going to come back and finesse it. So cut your line, and then on the end of this we're going to put a little plug, because obviously if you don't plug this up, then turn the irrigation on and it just shoots out. So we're going to plug it. Perfect. So then what we're going to do is in my little irrigation box, which is about the best thing ever because it has all my supplies in here, I also have my landscape staples, which that will just help me tie everything down here. So here we go. And then the next time I come in, I'm going to come in a little bit closer to the plant so that I have a double row here. All right, lay it in, easy peasy. Now we're going to grab the land and sea, top dress it, and then we are done with this one and we'll move on to the next one. All right, so land and sea is in, and just as a side note, I like to leave my soil, the final soil level a little bit below the lip, because if I do have, for some reason, have to come in here with a hose, or I want to do some water soluble fertilizer, I don't want it to overflow because then my soil flows out. So we've got one down, one to go. I'll meet you back here in a second. All right, my friends, so we've got project number 1 is complete. We have got the skyrocket grasses all nice and planted in their new homes in the western urns here on the back patio. Now, you might be looking at those arrangements and you're like, Jenny, they look kind of puny. Personally, I don't think they look puny because I know grasses, and those are some beautiful grasses. I'm going to show you back these in about 2 weeks, and I'm going to let you see how much they have grown, because when these babies get going, they are going to completely, like, they're going to go up, they're going to fill, and they're going to kind of hang over a little bit and kiss the edge of this pot. It is going to be stunning and spectacular. And having that irrigation in there nice and thick and giving them lots of good delicious water every day, then that will be just the ticket for them. I did bring out the hose and just washed everything down because it was a mess. It was just easier to get the hose out and get everything cleaned up. So skyrocket grasses are done. The next project that we are going to do is we're going to pop over. You might be able to see them kind of in front of me. We were trialing the new nemesias for Proven Winners that are going to be available next year. Nemesias are definitely a cool weather annual, beautiful, nice white. This was the coconut nemesia, which I think was like an improved version. I think they already had a coconut nemesia. Don't quote me on that, but it is a white nemesia and it did really well. The heat has hit. It is done, so we're going to take it out and we're going to put in some Blew My Mind Evolvulus. Blew My Mind Evolvulus, if you've never planted it, it is an amazing plant that can handle the heat and the humidity and neglect like an absolute champion. So let's pop on over there and we're going to get those planted. Okay, so here we have just this little pocket right here where I had the coconut nemesia in. And some of it has been slightly buried because this is a little quickfire. We don't grow little hydrangeas here in the South. Like, they really just absolutely go to town. Our little quickfires are not so little, nor are our like little lime hydrangeas. They get nice and big, but they are beautiful and spectacular. I am not complaining one iota. So all I'm doing is pulling out the nemesia and the 1 or 2 weeds that of course inevitably are also in this bed. And so what we're going to do is, like I said, I got right here the Blew My Mind Evolvulus, that it is not a new plant. Blew My Mind has been a Proven Winners plant for quite a while now, and it is a rock star, solid performer for us year after year. It loves neglect. You do not have to fuss over this plant, and once it is established, it is very drought tolerant. So just like that, I've got my nemesia out. I'm just kind of zhuzhing the soil around so that I can fill in those holes. Now, what I'm going to do, just to make it easier, I'm going to grab my biotone and I'm going to just kind of throw it down. That way, when I plant the evolvulus, it'll work into the soil easy peasy. Typically, I don't use biotone, especially with the evolvulus, because it's just such a great plant. But we are planting this in July. It is hot, so I'm going to give them the best start that I possibly can. So there you go. They typically are not heavy feeders. Like, I would not say, oh my gosh, yeah, you've got to be out there and feeding your evolvulus. Otherwise, they're just not going to bloom. Not it at all. So we're just going to do it really simple. There's no irrigation lines. There is an irrigation line, but I think it's up a little high. So I'll be careful with my hoary. This soil was nice and prepared. So of course I could grab my power planter auger, but doing these little guys right here, we're just gonna plop them in just like that. So I'm just gonna get these planted and I'll meet you back here in a second. All right guys, so I got some of those Blew My Minds in the ground. For those of you that are in the South and you are familiar with morning glories and how vigorous morning glories are here in the South, like for us, they are a weed. Like it just blows my mind that people actually like intentionally plant morning glories, because for us, they are just a nuisance weed. These are members of the morning glory family, but I say that cautiously in the fact of they are not gonna like start climbing and growing on things and be invasive and crazy. They have the characteristics of that morning glory where those pure blue flowers will open and close with the sun, so that you will see that they open and close daily. They are very drought tolerant once they are established, because they really act like a ground cover. They're not very tall, I mean maybe 6 to 8 inches, but then they spread. And when I say spread, I don't mean like crazy invasive spread. I just mean that they begin to go out. They're wider than they are tall. And as they lay down, they will start to kind of root onto the surface of the soil, which is another source for them to drink water in and get their nutrients in. So that is where the low-key, easy peasy, just kind of plant them and forget them. There is an irrigation tube running that meanders through there. We did get those 2 inches of rain last night, so I don't have to worry about watering them. They themselves were wet in the cup. The soil is moist. The irrigation will kick on. All will be well. They are fine. I do love that low pop of blue. It looks gorgeous with that little quick fire. Behind that is the classic Roseanne perennial geranium. So that's Roseanne. And then of course, back there in the back, we have the Mini Vista Indigo. And then we have other blues and purples in here. So all those colors tie in really nicely together. We're gonna do one more project while we're in this space. Right here off of my left shoulder, I have got 4 of my Chuck Hayes gardenias that took a massive hit in that Arctic blast around Christmas time. I did get one bloom off of my 4 plants, because gardenias bloom on old growth. So I got one sweet little bloom, and so I need to trim back the dead. And so I'm going to show you exactly how I'm going to trim my gardenias so that they will really flush out, look great, and hopefully next year be loaded in flowers like they have been in the past years. Okay friends, hopefully you can see this okay. So this is the Chuck Hayes gardenia that took the absolute worst hit. Like coming out of winter into spring, it was absolutely bare. It had zero foliage on it it was just nothing. And I was afraid I might have lost them, but praise the Lord, I did not, because these are one of my favorite gardenias, and I am very happy to report that it is coming back. Now, what I am doing, y'all, it is not rocket science. I am simply going in and finding the branches that have no growth on them, and I'm cutting them back. If it does have growth, like the whole stem may not be dead, but there could be like the top part of it is gone. So what I'm doing is just taking it back to where I see some growth, and then I'm trimming it up. The other 3 that are right here around me, they fared better. And in fact, when I was doing something, those back 2, they have blooms on them. They each have a bloom. So there you go. They are trying their best. With gardenias, they are like azaleas and camellias. They bloom on old growth. So if you need to prune them, because sometimes you just need to prune them, maybe nothing's wrong with them, they didn't suffer any damage, you just need to prune them. You want to prune them immediately after they finish flowering. That way they have time to put on new growth during this current growing season, which will be forming their flower buds for next year. If you were to prune your gardenias, say late fall or coming out of winter, going into spring, then you have just cut off all of your flower buds for that coming summer. So you definitely do not want to do that. You want to prune immediately after it finishes flowering. Some of the gardenias, some of the newer varieties will bloom on old and new growth. If that is the case, then you're going to want to prune really kind of after that first flush of flowers, and then you may lose some some of those flowers that could come, but overall that is when you want to do it. So we're just going to get in here. So I'm cleaning up this one because, like I said, is definitely the worst. Now, I have fertilized these. I fertilized them with some Hollytone because they are acid-loving plants. So let's see, when was that? That would have been early spring that I came out and kind of pulled back the mulch from around the base of the plant and gave them a nice dose of the Hollytone. Just follow the directions on the bag. So if you're not using Hollytone, or if you are using Hollytone or some other kind of slow release acidic fertilizer, then just follow the directions on the bag and it will tell you. Because sometimes it is, you know, it's based on the current size of the plant and so forth. Now, my gardenias that are more full, that are behind me, what I will do with those is I'm going to shape them up, because this will definitely going to be my small one. So I want my other ones to be in relative comparable size, and so I will prune them back. I'm just going to give them a shape up, right? I'm not going to go in there and like do anything crazy to them. I'm just going to go in and shape them up. So we're almost done with this one. I'll probably have to move around so that I can see. Gardenia care. Of course, if you are interested in growing gardenias, they are a southern shrub. They love it hot. Sometimes even in our North Carolina Zone 7B, I find that they don't fare well in the wintertime. Now, I know that the Arctic blast was not a normal winter for us. This was the first time that these gardenias have done this. I've had these here ever since we put the flower bed in, and they have reliably pulled through the winter really, really well. So yeah, this is by far the worst that they have suffered, because we had those sustained drying winds, and this is an evergreen shrub, and so it just really dehydrated those leaves. And then of course you put in with the cold temperature and they just could not handle it. So once I get this pruned, move around to the front. So once this is pruned, all of these are pruned, I will probably come back, not probably, I will come back and fertilize them again. That way they get another nice dose of food, so they can be nice and happy and put on lots of buds for next year, because gardenias, without a doubt, are my favorite flower. Always have been. Love them. All right, so sweet thing over here, looking better, not so nearly skeletal. Just cleaning it up, making sure that they get consistent water. They do love this heat, so this is definitely their active growing time. And then come back with some slow release fertilizer like that Hollytone, and they should fill in and do just fine for me. I keep finding little sprigs. Do just fine for me next year. We have high hopes. If you're a gardener, I think you have to be naturally optimistic. All right, so this one is done. We can move on to the other ones. All right, my friends. Jenny's gonna call it quits. It is high noon. It is a very warm, toasty day, but I have gotten 3 great projects done. I feel really good, and especially back here on this back patio, it's really hard to work here in the summer unless you get up at the crack of dawn, because as soon as the sun comes up, I mean, it hits back here. So it is really toasty, but to get these 3 projects done, I got bumblebees buzzing behind me. To get these 3 projects done, between switching out the urns, getting the evolvulus in, pruning back my gardenias, I feel very accomplished. So you know, whatever you can do, whether you get out there early in the morning or late in the evening, like late afternoon, find some time just to go out in your garden, even if it's just for 5 minutes and you pull one weed. Just get out there, check on things, because this is the prime time where you're gonna have problems show up. Is there a watering issue? Are the weeds overtaking something? Do you all of a sudden have bugs that have infested a plant that you need to address? Is there some sort of fungus or some sort of disease that has popped up? So when you just go through and kind of do your walkthrough of your gardens, just be looking for that. Use that investigative eye, and if a plant doesn't look right, stop, investigate, and try to figure out why it is that way. But if you have spring annuals, that like cool weather annuals, and they have kind of petered out and they're looking sad, or maybe you went on vacation and the person you got to water your plants for you, maybe they forgot one of those containers and it gave up the ghost, don't be afraid to go ahead and plant it. You can absolutely still be planting in the summer. You just want to make sure you use nice fresh soil, good fertilizer, and you keep consistent water on them, and they will do just fine. So I am going to go plunge my head in an ice bath, drink my body weight in ice water, and just cool down. As always, we hope you have found this fun, informative, and inspirational. Thank you so much for growing with Creekside. We appreciate you. Happy gardening. Bye, friends.